this is the first Outlander event that I've attended. I have to say, if the rest of them are anything like this, I'm going to have a very, very happy time. So, thank you very much for inviting me. It's been really lovely to come here and meet you all. Well, meet my lovely ladies at the table and meet the rest of you later on. Now, before I sort of start on what I was expecting to talk about, which I will talk about, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the pipe band. I didn't actually expect that, and my father played the pipes, and it's always a very emotional experience for me to listen to them. I mean, when he played them, when other people played them, and when they played them just now. And I think they're the most marvelous instrument. And I was watching a television show recently about a Scottish battalion that fought in the First World War, that came from the Isle of Skye, from Portree. And most of that battalion were lost in a single day in a battle in France in 1916. And they talked about the pipes, and the pipes were an enormously, I'm sure a lot of you know this, an enormously important part of Scottish regiments. And they quite literally led the men into battle with them, going back way before the time of Outlander or any of that sort of period, and to the present day. And there's a couple of stories that I wanted to share with you about that, just because I saw that pipe band and I thought you might be interested. There was a piper on D-Day called Bill Fraser, and he was the piper for the commanders, the Royal Marine commanders that were landing, Lord Lovat's battalion on, I believe, Sword Beach on D-Day. And they were the first wave, and Lord Lovat famously wore, I mean, he didn't wear camouflage or any of that sort of nonsense. He carried a furled umbrella and a white Aran jumper, just to really stand out, so that people could shoot him. And he went on the beach, and it was their task to hold the beach until the reinforcements came. And he told his piper, or asked his piper, Bill, he said, Bill, would you mind piping up and down the beach until the rest of the men arrive? Now, all of this conversation was occurring while they were being shot at from all directions. And Bill Fraser, being the fine Scotsman that he was, said, absolutely, sir. And he continued to walk up and down that beach, unarmed, he was not armed, for half an hour, under enemy fire, to give a morale boost to the men as they were landing. And the Germans on the day, when they saw him do that, at first they just thought this man was insane for doing that. And then they grew to respect what he was doing, and they stopped firing at him and let him do that. And I think that's a great testimony to many things, but one of which is the power of the pipes. And I was reminded that there was an experiment to do with the power of that music. And they had a guy on a treadmill, and they played normal sort of regular music, you know, what you'd call pop music, or somebody in my generation would call pop music, and to see how that would enhance their performance. And they played silence to see how that would work. And then they played the pipes. And the pipes made the athlete perform better. Yes! It's true. They are that powerful. So anyway, that's my diversion with the pipes. But I thought I'd share it because I'm a great lover of it. So, now, I will consult a few notes that I made earlier. When I told a friend that I was asked to speak for 25 minutes, he just laughed. He just thought, are they mad? But here I am. Okay, now, I think one of the things, actually, I'm going to be diverting all the time. Glasses. I'm going to just talk a little bit about glasses. Now, sadly, like a lot of you, I now wear glasses to read. It's very sad. Very sad. But I was reading something very interesting about glasses and the invention of the printing press. The invention of the printing press, which happened, I believe, in the 17th century. Up until that point, people didn't read, really, unless you were in the church, or there was no need to, because there wasn't any printed material. But when the printing press was invented, suddenly people wanted to read, and it was only then that they realized they needed glasses. Because up until that point, there'd been no reason to find out. And because of that, this led to the invention of the spectacle, with the use of the glass, so that people could read. And then, as a result of that, that led to the invention of the microscope. And the microscope, that led to the discovery of bacteria and the cure for certain diseases. And it all started with the humble printing press. And it led to telescopes and all the rest of it. And it sort of brings me to what I did want to talk about. I will get there eventually. And it's really, it's like Claire in the books, really, that the paths that we take, and the paths that life takes, inventions if you want, the paths that they take lead us to destinations that we cannot foresee. And I suppose when I was coming here, I thought, well, I would never, ever have imagined that I would be standing in a room like this with all you lovely people talking about these books when I began my career as an actor. And I suppose, like Claire, to understand those paths, I need to go back in time. And in my case, that takes me to, I started acting, if you want to call it acting, when I was about 16 or 17. I used to write comic sketches. I know. That's what I used to do for fun. Myself and a friend, Neil Graham, another Scot, we used to write these comic sketches, and we didn't trust anybody else to perform them, because we were that vain and arrogant. We just thought, no, nobody can do it, it's work, we could. So we would perform them ourselves, but I had no interest in acting. I wanted to be, like Diana here, I wanted to be a writer. That was my passion. And I used to write books when I was a teenager. I wrote one at the age of 11 called, the fabulously titled, The Island of Death. Guess what that was about? Yeah, I remember there was a unicorn in it. That's the kind of thing you write about when you're 11. Unicorns and death. And I went on to write 2 more. And I believe the only people that have ever read them, because for some reason, I loved writing them. I really loved writing them. And you know, the last one, the third one, was about 200-something pages long when I was 14. And I never let anybody read them. It's very strange, I've still got them. But that's what I wanted to be anyway. I wanted to be a novelist. And that led to me writing comic sketches, etc., etc. And then I was performing these comic sketches, and my drama teacher, or the drama teacher at the school, would ask me continually to be in plays. And I always said no. I had no interest, I wanted to be in all these 12th night, all this stuff. I said no. And then eventually, there was a production of The Rivals by Sheridan. I don't know if you know it. But there's a character in that called Bob Akins. So it's a comedy. And he came to me, the teacher, and said, we really would like you to be in this play, because the actor who plays Bob Akins is ill, and it's 3 days before the show opens, and we need somebody to take over. And to this day, and this is absolutely true, I have no idea why I agreed. No idea. I suspect that there was a girl in the cast. That's more than likely. And so I learned the lines in 3 days, which I would be hard pushed to do now. I learned the whole part, and I performed it only once, and that was it. I was bitten by that bug, and that was, yeah, 1978. Oh God. 1970, some of you weren't even born in 1970. I was sitting next to somebody who wasn't born in 1978. It's so depressing. But I wouldn't have missed the 70s for anything. Really. But anyway, after that, I did some amateur theatre. I did amateur theatre for a year before I went to university. I was a mailman for 6 months, in my year between school and university. And when I wasn't delivering post, I was acting in the local church amateur company called the Priory Players. And I would do that for the year. Then I went to university, and I did a lot at university. Once I finished university, I went professional, and I did a one-man play by Samuel Beckett called Crap's Last Tape. And in those days, to get your union card in Britain, you had to do a certain number of performances. So I would go around pubs all over Britain and get these payments. And I would perform in these they're pretty rough pubs I was in. And this is a Beckett play. This isn't, it wasn't the normal thing that the clientele of those pubs was used to. And I remember one night I was performing, and the band downstairs, the Irish band, were getting pretty raucous. And there was one person, only one person in the audience. It was very sad. But because it was a one-man show, I felt that I had to still perform it. And so I did it. And I really thought that it was one of my best performances. I really thought this was good. This was good. And when I came to do the bow, at the end, I just looked at him and said, let's just go downstairs for a drink. For a drink. And he went, good. And I went downstairs, and hoping, obviously, that he'd enjoyed it, he hadn't understood any of it. It had nothing. An hour of my life I will never get back. But I did go on. I got on to get my union card, and I went professional and started doing TV and a lot of theatre. And I was eventually drawn back again to Scotland. I was living in London at the time, and again through a woman, she drew me back to Scotland. I fell in love with a Scottish girl, and I moved back to Glasgow, and that's really where I began doing a lot of theatre, and that was great. I got to be in some wonderful productions, which then led to me coming down to London, which led to me going to Los Angeles eventually. But it's strange the forks in the road that you take, I suppose. And one of the forks in my road was a bit like, I guess, to refer back to Outlander, when Claire decides to go back to the Stones. That is definitely a fork in her road. And for me, the decision to move to America was a big step. I just had my first child. My wife had just had our eldest daughter. And I was due to do a musical version of Lord of the Rings. I bet you're really glad I never did that. If you've ever heard me sing, yeah, actually I didn't have to sing. I wasn't supposed to sing it. I was supposed to play Saruman. So I would have just had to come on, be evil, leave. Come back on, be a bit more evil, leave. And I was supposed to do that for 18 months. And it was good money, West End, Theatre Royal, Drury Lane, just had a baby. And I decided 3 weeks before I was due to start rehearsals to move to America instead. And I had a role, a small, very small part in a film called Rendition. Tiny part. But I thought, I should go. And with my 4-week-old baby, my wife, we flew to America and left The Lord of the Rings behind. And it's strange to me that all those years later, I end up being in The Hobbit. Life is very strange. And when I arrived in America, I got off the plane, I got out of a taxi, and my then manager rang me and said, the film rendition? Yeah. He said, that part's been cut. They'd cut the part. And I was standing there, I can feel it now, even as I'm telling you this story. I was standing there thinking, oh my God, I've made the worst decision of my life. This is terrible. And I stood there and absorbed that news. And then a week later, I had an audition for Rambo. You know, I'd grown up with those films, so I was excited to have a meeting to go in. And I walked, I drove to the meeting and I sat down, and I was in this huge area. And normally when you're in LA and you go to these sort of things, the casting area is very small, kind of pokey, but this was very large. And I looked around and I became aware that all the posters on the walls were posters of Rocky, other Rambo films, all this and that. I'm like, oh my God, I'm in his office. And I was looking around, and then this presence just loomed up next to me. And he just went, hey, how you doing? And I was sitting down, and I think if you pardon my French, I made a complete tit of myself. I sort of half got up, and I sort of went, yeah. You know, good luck, I'll see you later. And he walked off. And then I went with the casting director and I did the audition. And at the end of the day, they rang and they offered me the job. And that was a week after I arrived. And I look back to that fork in the road. And that fork in the road has led to this. It led to The Hobbit, it led to Outlander, all of these things are interconnected. And I find that very interesting, and I think it's one of the appeals of a story like Outlander as well, is that you follow her path. And it's such an unexpected journey that she goes on. And you become very involved with it, partly for that reason. So that's the brief history of my career. I really won't bore you with every single audition that I ever took. But to go on to Outlander, I first heard about it while I was wearing prosthetic makeup in my trailer in New Zealand doing The Hobbit. So I was standing in 70 pounds of costume. Yes, I really did wear 70 pounds of costume. For 2.5 years. But it was great, I wouldn't have missed it for the world, but I had the prosthetic makeup on, and my manager called and said, told me about the show. And said they'd been interested, Stars had been interested in me for a different show called Black Sails, which, yes, it's a good show, yeah. But it clashed with The Hobbit, so I wasn't able to do that, but they were interested in me for Outlander, and it went backwards and forwards, and there was a lot of, they were looking for Jamie, and they were looking for, so the process was a slow one. And in the meantime, I got offered a Viking film, and I was supposed to go and shoot that. And then they offered me Outlander, they offered me Dougal, and it was a direct clash. And I spoke to my manager, and this is, again, thinking back, you know, decisions that you make and paths that you go down. I said to my manager, I have to do Outlander. I really want to do it. And to her credit, she made it work, and I gracefully and respectfully declined the Viking job. And joined the Merry Band in Scotland, Cumbernauld. And I mean, Diana's been to Cumbernauld. Have any of you been to Cumbernauld? No, nobody's been to Cumbernauld. Now, don't rush to go to Cumbernauld. Okay? There are many beautiful places in Scotland. Cumbernauld is not one. In fact, the motto of Cumbernauld is, what's it called? Cumbernauld. I mean, you know that you are desperate when that is all you can come up with. What's it called? Cumbernauld. But anyway, I had the great pleasure of going up there, and I met Sam in London. We had what they call a chemistry read to make sure that we kind of get on with each other, I suppose. And Sam is, if you get a chance to meet him, you will know, he's one of the loveliest, warmest, kindest people you'll meet. And I once said that he is J.B. Fraser, and I meant it. He really is. It was, if anybody was born to play a part, Sam Hewitt was born to play that part. And it was lovely to meet him. Very true. And I knew immediately, we got on very well. We did a few scenes together, and we did one scene, the scene where Claire's overhearing us talking by the campfire, and I'm, talking about having to show his back, and he's getting all upset about all that. And we did that scene, and we got quite physical in the audition. And I thought, oh yeah, this will be good. This will work. And I think it did. And I'm really, really glad to be a part of that story and to have been a part of the experience up till now of making such an extraordinary piece of television. And I think one of the reasons, not only for the novels, which speak for themselves in terms of their appeal, but the television show, I think, occupies a place that no other show occupies at the moment in American TV, certainly that I know of. I think people are a bit jaded when it comes to a lot of television, because so much of it has no hope in it. And I don't know if that resonates with anybody, but I've watched some beautifully acted television and some fabulous writing and some great storylines, but I haven't been able to like any of the people in the shows. I found that very hard. And I've enjoyed them, but they've left me feeling a little hopeless. And I think Outlander balances that out. I think Outlander is full of hope, and I think it's one of its great appeals. It's me, I'm nearly out of time. I can't believe I've been talking for that long already. Now, I will try and just finish as quickly as I can with some thoughts about just the read-throughs that we've had. I was telling some of the ladies at my table, one of them, after a particularly thorough whiskey tasting, was not a pretty sight. There were people that were coming onto that show for the first time for one episode that just thought that the lead cast were a bunch of drunks. We were still hungover. Cat could barely sit up, but they were good. They were good. And I also had the great pleasure of being back in Scotland and looking into my own past, my own family past. And I think a lot of you here will have Scottish ancestry, and it's been one of the great pleasures of being here, actually, discovering seeing these little windows into the past, like little bits of time travel. When you look at a census, or you go and you find a signature, or in my case, no signature. I had my great-great-great-grandmother, Isabella, who was married to George McTavish. And in 1871, when they signed their marriage certificate, they signed it with an X, because they were both illiterate. And it makes me sad a bit, I suppose, that they were illiterate, but immensely proud as well that my father was born in 1922, so within 50 years, they'd gone from being illiterate to being, having a great-great-grandson who was a pilot, who was able to fly planes. And it makes me think, to go back to the beginning of what I was talking about, the journeys that we go down and how we reach them. And I think that Isabella and George in 1871 would have found that they wouldn't have been able to believe where that journey would have ended up. And I hope they would have been proud that I'm trying my best to represent my country as best I can. But to conclude, I once wrote a play about Vincent van Gogh. Well, you call him Van Gogh here. But, and in Holland they call him Van Gogh, which is a little tricky to say. I mean, it sounds like you're ill. But I wrote a play about him, and there was a speech that came to me when I was coming here that I thought sums up really what I was trying to say. And this is, I wish I could take the credit for these words, but they are Vincent's words. I wouldn't want to take them away from him. And it goes along, he says, "Sometimes I feel I am a traveler going somewhere, to some destination. Like a one-way journey on a train. You go fast, but you cannot distinguish any object very close. And above all, you do not see the engine. In the same way, a child in the cradle has the infinite in its eyes. And that, for me, is one proof of a life beyond the grave." Thank you very much.